Let's go, turn that shit up, man.
Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? You come home after a long day, you need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone at the fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft, then tap on a beer like genuine draft. Study all the players, look close at the stats. A QB first, then a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio, then on your screen you see Jackle, Ivan, and Claudio. It's a take, never lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production. Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, it's a football fantasy.
Yo, what is going on, fucking TTNL family, fantasy football heads? You expected to see Claudio. Sorry, didn't mean to disappoint you. Claudio is not dealing. He's got some family obligations. He is being a good dad this evening. And week 14's in the books. Week 15 is here. Playoffs for some. Last week of the regular season for others. Shit, Ivan, it's you and I tonight. What do I'm trying to bring you on. We're clicking.
I know,
my guy.
So
how are we doing?
I'm doing good, Jackle. Both doing it at the same time. We got it all screwed up since Claudio decided to just leave us.
Last minute.
I'm joking.
We kid.
He has stuff to do, and we all have stuff to do. When we get busy, we all understand. But welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Keepin' It Fantasy here on the Tape Never Lies Network. Before we get started, you know what to do. Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you go to the tapeneverlies.com. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. Mm-hmm. Become a patron. You get all the bonus coverage, DDP breakdowns, Eric Kramer breakdowns, X's with the O's. You get Cars Keys, all that good stuff. Make sure you go ahead and do that. But, Jackle, it has been a long week for me. Like I was telling you before, fantasy has been rough to me this season. But, I digress. It is what it is. We're getting prepared for the postseason coming up. Well, you guys are going to get prepared for the postseason. I'm getting ready for the consolation prize. So
cracking beers and watching the games.
Yeah, cracking beers, watching the games, just shits and giggles at this point. But man, thank you guys for being here. Jackle, I know we were talking a lot about some good stuff for next week, which we'll break down a little bit later on in the show. But why don't we just go ahead and get into it? Why don't we just start with the studs and duds for the week?
Sure.
I'll kick it off real quick. I know we had a lot of turnover. There was a lot of injuries too, as well.
Injuries, lots of buys too.
Lots of buys.
16, lots of teams. Like if you had Justin Fields and you were running through the teams in your second half of your schedule, and all of a sudden, you have that week 14 bye right before the playoffs. I definitely had that dilemma. If you played your cards right, hopefully you got a W and you're playing accordingly. Hey, shit, if you started Brock Purdy and, it worked out for you this, week 14. But it was a wild week, man. Some crazy numbers, some huge injuries. Some people dodged the bullet, other people not so lucky. But yeah, man, why don't you kick it off with who you liked or who you had that benefited you for week 14?
Well, I'll stick with the guy you talked about just right now, Brock Purdy, man. I was watching that game and I told my wife, I was like, damn, San Francisco is up 21-0. I'm like, San Francisco's up 28-0. San Francisco's going to beat the shit out of the Buccaneers. And, Brock Purdy was a big part of that. 16-21, 76.2 completion percentage. Had 185 yards, 8.8 yards on average, 2 tutties, 21.7 points. And you got to give it up to him, man. He was doing his thing, very efficient. didn't turn over the biggest thing, didn't turn over the football. Yeah. So I was happy with the performance. I was like, man, kind of a little shocked. I told you guys,
maybe that little shoulder fake, that little pump fake action, bro. I was like, look at this dude, man.
Right.
That scheme that they run, it looks like they, Mr. Irrelevant at one point. Clearly, they liked what they saw. They kept him on the roster. Shit, it was impressive to see. I'd like to think that he could continue, but they got 9 lives in San Francisco. We talked about it last week, or while we were texting each other.
Yeah,
they seem to just someone goes down, somebody steps up. It's just that's what you hope,
right? And I mean, if he's efficient enough, and this is fantasy and non-fantasy wise, I know we only have a week left, but he could be a force for the San Francisco 49ers. Doesn't have to be all world, but he could be the guy that just keeps the ship going, keeps the ship afloat. And he looks confident. That's the biggest thing. He looks confident, young guy.
He'd be 17 Purdy, going into week 15.
Right. Brock Purdy would be a stud for me. He's eighth quarterback overall this weekend. So Brock Purdy, number 1 guy I'm talking about today. What do you got, Jack?
I like that. I'm going to stay with quarterbacks. And we've been talking about it all year. He was I don't want to call him Justin Fields' competition, but Trevor Lawrence. With respects to how things have been going for him this year, that ascension to the next level, I think you're seeing that, not just football speaking, but fantasy wise. He had a huge week, 33.42 points, 20 plus fantasy points out of 5 out of the last 6 games. He's now riding a streak of 181 consecutive passes without an interception. So he's obviously feeling alive, he's feeling himself, he's comfortable, he's very confident out there. He's got some tough matchups coming up week 15 against the Cowboys, week 16 against the Jets. But at the same time, negative game script. If they get down, they're going to have to throw anyway. That could mean big day for him again. So I thought he was a monster in week 14. I just was not surprised. Just if you rode like the Zay Jones wave, and with all the targets, or Evan Ingram this week, and we'll probably get to him with the
start. God.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, man. The Jaguars have shown they've hit on a couple of guys, a couple signings, draft picks. And Lawrence is, the fruits of that labor as well, man. He's definitely coming into his own. Good coach, got Urban out of there, and here we are, man. So my guy was Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And in past 3 weeks, he's had 7 touchdown passes, no interceptions. 2 games were over 300 yards. The only one that wasn't was the loss to Detroit. But, he's been on a roll. It's just kind of – at first it was a little bit shaky. We were talking about it like it's kind of iffy here and there, a lot of peaks and valleys. But then all of a sudden it's just started to become consistent from Trevor Lawrence. So, he was the number 1 overall quarterback this week as far as fantasy is concerned. Another guy I want to go ahead and jump to be honest, Daniel Jones didn't do horribly bad. He had 19 points. He's at number 11 overall. They ran into a buzzsaw, and I had mentioned it before. They ran into a buzzsaw. I thought he did. I would call him. I guess I call him a stud. It's a studly performance by him. He did enough, I guess, to try to win, but it's just hard to go up against the Eagles. He was 18 to 27, 66.7 completion percentage, only 169 yards for 1 touchdown, but he gave you 19.4 points, had 4 attempts on the ground, and also had a touchdown on the ground. So, he is who he is. You know what I'm saying? He is who he is. He gave you, the best he could, and he gave you 19.4 fantasy points. So I'm going to go ahead and give him a stud.
Okay.
I'm going to go double up real quick. A guy that's been just bombarded with criticism this year, and deservedly so. Russell Wilson was a stud until he got knocked out of that game. He got completely. They showed the close up of that knot on his head. Hope Russell's
like Rothman.
Hope Russell's all right, but he was 23 of 36, 63.9% completion, 247 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 4 carries for 57 yards, 26.6 fantasy points this week. So he was a stud, even though the Denver Broncos are kind of that that ride is a long one.
Yeah.
So it's been a long ride for them this year.
The next ride is the unemployment line ride for fucking Hackett.
Oh man, yeah. I think it could be. It could be. What else you got, Jackle?
So you brought up Daniel Jones. I'm going to go on the flip side. Go Jalen Hurts. Another solid game for him. He was 21 for 31, 217 yards. He had 2 touchdowns as well as a rushing touchdown. 30.38 fantasy points. So it's. The Eagles are chumming along, man. And if you had any shares in him or Miles Sanders this past weekend, you were happy. And I'm just gonna slide on over to receivers. Justin Jefferson is just continuing to show why he is, why the Vikings laughed when the Eagles took Jalen Reagor, right? 33.3 fantasy points. He's making history, apparently. When I was doing a little research here, he's had 5 games of 30-plus fantasy points this season, totaling 9 in his career. Among wide receivers, only Lance Allworth has totaled more in his first 46 games of an NFL wide receiver with 11. And that speaks to back when they started doing the fantasy stats in the 50s or whatever. But he's now the league leader in fantasy points for wide receivers, taking over Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs this past weekend. He's on pace for almost 400 fantasy points, just under 390 actually. So that's pretty monumental. Justin Jefferson and the Vikings may suck, but fantasy wise, it's just it's lights out for him if he's in your wide receiver core.
Yeah, he's one of those guys like I was mentioning, and it's funny because I had mentioned him before. Devontae, he had a down week, but similar to him, putting up those 30 points, 30 points, and you could really just throw the ball up to him. He's going to go get it. You've seen that one-handed miraculous, ridiculous catch that he had earlier on in the season. He's always a great pick as far as studs are concerned. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the running backs. Jerick McKinnon had
Claudio's boy, man.
A day, and Claudio's boy for sure. He had a day. He only had 6 attempts on the ground, 22 yards, but through the air he caught 7 passes off 9 targets, 112 yards, and 2 tuds, 32.4 fantasy points. If you're looking at Fantasy Pros, I'm sure he got a couple more, or here and there depending on what your league was. But Jerick McKinnon, the number 1 overall running back this week in fantasy.
Good call. Yeah, he was a dude playing in his 100th NFL game, which was kind of nice, a little celebratory moment for him. And he's got a dream matchup coming up. He's got, I think, the Texans and the Seahawks. So if you have him if you're able to get your hands on him or you have him, he's a guy you're probably going to start with some confidence, with week 15. He's not going to get many carries, but, see Clyde Edwards-Helaire is out. And so with all that, you got Isaiah Pacheco there, who, I'm a fan of, but I think McKinnon and Pacheco are going to get you fantasy points regardless in that offense. So, good call with McKinnon, man.
And Pacheco added, just to mention, because he's not really a top, but he added, I believe, 12.
Yeah, I had like 11.7 or 12.4, depending on.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So he had an efficient day as well. It wasn't like a down day for him. But, yeah, you'll take those points, especially if you're struggling at running back like I am. But, yeah, definitely a good combo there with the Chiefs and the Chiefs backfield.
I'm going to stick with running back since you went there. Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy goes down, and who becomes the focal point? They're going to get the ball in his hands, and that'd be CMC. 33.95 fantasy points. What was it? In the last 2 games, he's 28 fantasy points or more on average. So he's obviously doing some good things right now, and they lost their quarterback last week. Purdy stepped in. They continue, they shifted a little bit, made, a little bit of dinking and dunking. Obviously, they're doing those. I mean, I saw some breakdown earlier today of some tape with him. Just the vision he has with a play designed to one side, and he just sees this little lane, and he pops it out to the right for the touchdown, and you're just like, that was not the design play, but at the same time, he just took it to the house, and that's why he's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's doing everything. He's getting catches, so the receiving usage is there. He's running the ball with volume, and he's always scoring. So 153 total yards, 15 touches against Tampa, and it's got Seahawks next week. I'll take that, and it looks to be one of the top probably running backs for Week 15 going into the playoffs, man.
Yeah, you know what?
But last week, Garoppolo went down. This week, Deebo Samuel went down. Ralphie.
Yeah, I think you said Purdy earlier. I think that's why Ralphie had mentioned it.
Well,
Maybe I'm wrong.
I was saying Purdy came in after Garoppolo got hurt. I might have spoke. I'm rambling sometimes, so he could be right. I'm probably wrong. No offense, Ralph. I'm just saying.
No, but I agree with you. They're going to ride CMC for throughout this playoff run. His talent has always been there, but now you put him with this team who his identity is to run the ball and use the running backs, and not really necessarily big plays downfield, but use that play action to create some open areas downfield. That's
they dodged the bullet with
fit.
Debo's injury too, right?
Oh yeah. High ankle sprain. They said he'll be ready for the playoffs. So I imagine he's shut down. They're icing him. He's getting all the therapy he needs because that's a
team
force.
Approved massages and all that.
Yeah, team approved massages, Debo. But yeah, that's a great pick. CMC as always is typically.
Can I give you one more running back real quick? Miles Sanders.
Go ahead, yeah.
Real quick, just a dude that was last year was kind of like a fantasy anomaly. He didn't have any touchdowns, and I think he got his 11th or 10th and 11th this year. It's pretty wild for a guy that was kind of an afterthought going into this season. You're looking at it kind of running back by committee, and all of a sudden this guy seemed to be taking over at 28.5 fantasy points. He's had 71.3 fantasy points in the last 3 weeks, second to only Josh Jacobs, who has, I think, like 88 or almost 89 fantasy points in the same span. He plays the Bears this week too, so look like the Bears, who give up, I think, like the 5th most fantasy points to running backs this year. So yeah, it's a good matchup for Sanders. But those are a couple of stars for me that I had for running backs.
Yeah, and to answer Ruffy's question, I think it was right now. I think it's just a high ankle sprain.
No, I did see he had they did say an MCL sprain as well, but it still said 3 weeks ish was what I was reading today before we got together this evening.
Well, the high ankle is probably, if that's the case, I'm not a doctor, but I would imagine the MCL is probably less severe. No, it wasn't as severe as obviously the high ankle sprain. So
I agree.
As long as Debo comes back, he's a great player, great to watch. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stay with the running backs. James Conner has had himself a month. Well, actually, it's about 5 weeks. So, and I'll give him the one against Seattle. I would say that's a pretty solid week, a decent week for him, especially the way he started out the season. I'm going to read off the last 5 games: 11.4, 23.6, 13.4, 21, and 23.4. This past yesterday against the New England Patriots in a loss, but he has stepped up, man. It's good to see him step up because I thought he was going to be on the big bust of the year.
He's the one thing that's consistent for that offense,
right? And now that you lost Kyler Murray, and we'll get to him, I imagine they're going to go ahead and lean a little bit more on James Conner. 15 carries, 85 yards, 1 touchdown. 6 receptions off 7 targets, 29 yards. Like I said, 23.4. So he's a stud.
That's a good one, man. Yeah, he's had double-digit carries and drawing 3 to 7 targets in the last 4 games. So he's doing it all, and that coincides with the numbers you just read off. With the fantasy production. So, granted, he's got a tough matchup coming in against the Broncos, but at the same time, hey, I like James Conner, man. That's a great call. It was fun watching him run last night. He had to kind of put the team on his back and try to do something because he was battling against Judon and the boys, and that was a fun game.
What was crazy? That fumble return, and we're gonna just mention it real quick. Like, I was just like, why is he doing that with the football? And I know D-Hop is a great talent. He's a great receiver. I was just like, you deserve to lose that football. You deserve to lose that football carrying it the way you did. It was just doesn't make sense. I know it's desperation time for the Cardinals, but you got to be able to protect the football. Yeah. Be smart, do the small things. I'll double up real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
We'll get the tight ends in here. I'll just knock it out of the park. Evan Ingram.
Yeah,
just ridiculous. 11 receptions, 15 targets, 162 yards. 2 touchdowns, 39.2 points. He had 3 catches over or plus 20 yards, had a long of 25. He had himself a day. And to be honest, we were talking about that resurgence of Evan Ingram, and it's just kind of been, like I said, spotty, similar to what Trevor Lawrence's year has been up until recently. But yeah, if he could find, if he's a reliable target for him, and I'm not going to say he's going to put up 39 points each week, he could have a resurgence in Jacksonville, especially with a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence.
Of course, man, especially with the way that Lawrence is playing that ascension to the next level. Typically, there's a tight end that goes along with that, right, in an offense. Normally that linchpin safety blanket, however you want to look at it, but Ingram seems to be the guy. That was a great pickup again for the Jaguars. Plenty of cap space. Looks like they, invested some of that money wisely, and it gives me hope as a Bears fan, hoping that, we have similar situations just a year behind. And, I'm hoping in terms of a rebuild, we could, get make a couple of hits like that. But great call on Ingram. Yeah, he was the tight end that killed it, man. I mean, all the other tight ends, there were some tight ends that absolutely sucked. If you want to slide over to duds, man, Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki. I don't even think Gesicki had any points, and neither did Noah Fant. They just had flat out zeros. And Mark Andrews had almost 3.2 fantasy points, six targets, 2 catches, 17 yards total, man. It's just not what you expect out of him. Granted, quarterback's injured, as we talk about the relationship to the quarterback and tight end. We were hoping Huntley would be able to do something. He goes out, and Anthony Brown had to play, I think, right? Isn't that the undrafted rookie that went in?
I think so.
Yeah, so things aren't looking too, it looks like Lamar hopefully will be back, or maybe one more week. But yeah, I thought those were some duds on the tight end slide. We'll just get them out of the way, and I'm going to kick it over to you so you can go wherever you want.
Just to mention real quick, George Kittle also was a dud this week, 6.8 fantasy points. So I'll just to wrap up some of the tight ends have been very, very brutal this year.
Oh shit, what's his name? Had a really good week. The dude from he's got the I can't say his name. Is it Okonkwo, the tight end for the Chargers? He had a real
Okonkwo.
Thank you.
I don't want to butcher it.
I tried. No, I did not do it justice. But he had 12.5 fantasy points, 6 targets, 6 catches, 45 yards in a tud for 12.5. That's pretty solid for a guy that, if you were looking for kind of a shot in the dark there, we talked about last week, but he performed for tight ends. It was wild. Just names you don't expect did well in the tight end front, as is the tight end position in 2022 fantasy football.
Yeah, I'll try his name. Chigozim Okonkwo, maybe. But he had a great week, plays for the Tennessee Titans. If I butchered your name, sir, I apologize. I truly do. I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back real quick.
Do that.
And then I'm going to go ahead and kick myself in the ass. So I'll
know where that's going.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So Saquon Barkley definitely was a dud this week. I had mentioned it last week. I was, I had to take my shots. You know what I'm saying? Take my shots. Took that Stephon Diggs one. Ralphie gave me a bunch of crap for it. I think everybody did. But, I got to shoot your shot somewhere. One finally hit. And Saquon Barkley, sorry, he's a great player. Had a bad week. 6.8 points, 9 carries, 28 yards, no tuds. 2 receptions, 20 yards, and that was it. Rough week for the Giants. I figured that they were going to get blown out by the Eagles. That's like I said,
Has he hit a wall, you think? I mean, he hasn't had 100 yards since, week 10 against Houston. You hope he does well against the Commanders coming up, but do you think he's kind of hit a little bit of a wall, or is it just what's going on with the Giants?
I think the Giants benefited from an easy first half of the schedule.
Okay.
Not to say that Saquon isn't, back, or he doesn't look physically unable to perform or whatever like that. It's just, I think they were just pretenders. I just think that's kind of who they were always going to be, is a team that's what's the record in the last few games? Like they haven't been great. I know that. It hasn't
one in the last 4. I don't remember.
One in the last 4, one in the last 5, something like that. So it's been rough for the Giants. I think they were 7-2 at one point, right? Something like that. But anyway, Saquon Barkley had a bad week. But like I said, as soon as I pat myself on the back,
7-5-1.
Okay. As soon as I pat myself on the back, I got to kick myself in the ass. DeAndre Swift had a bad week as well. He had 0.1 more points than Saquon, 6 carries, 21 yards, 3 receptions for 18 yards and no tuds whatsoever. I thought he was going to have a better week against the Vikings, but yeah, it was rough for DeAndre Swift. It's been a rough year for DeAndre Swift.
It's weird because I feel like they're kind of phasing Jamal Williams out because he didn't do very well. He had a worse day than Jamal Williams or than DeAndre Swift did. 3.7 points. He had 16 rushes for only 37 yards, averaged 2.31 yards per carry. So I don't know if they're slowly kind of getting it, but the game script led to, look at the numbers the receivers put up. If you had, DJ Shark, Jameson Williams had a touchdown catch. I'm trying to remember. Amon St. Brown had another big day. So, the receivers had big days. And I always thought Swift would benefit from the PPR format with that, with a passing script like that. But, they just were hucking it all over the place. But, yeah, I thought Jamal Williams was another dud on the running back side. One thing that is interesting is Nick Chubb. I felt like he was a dud. If he didn't get that touchdown, he would have had a pretty crummy day. He had 14. What was it? He had 8.2 fantasy points, and he's only had 114 rushing yards on 20 receiving yards in his last 2 games. So he didn't
pick up a touchdown this past game.
He didn't have one?
No. You might be looking up the numbers might have mixed on your.
Oh, I thought Nick Chubb had a rushing touchdown.
No, he's got no rushing touchdowns this
my
week.
Bad. I thought he had a fumble that brought him to 6. Anyway, regardless, Nick Chubb in the offense, it's a Deshaun Watson offense now, and it's like they're not necessarily giving the ball to Chubb. Kareem Hunt's an afterthought. I just think that it's Deshaun Watson, and he's throwing all over to Donovan Peoples-Jones and the guys over there. But Chubb was a dud for me as well on the fantasy side.
Yeah, he hasn't had a touchdown in 2 weeks, actually. The win against Houston and the loss to Cincinnati, 0 touchdowns for Nick Chubb. The Brown, like you had mentioned, that's a good point. Like, as soon as Deshaun came in, it was the Deshaun Watson show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, all right, forget our identity. We're gonna become this. This is our new identity. To be honest, I don't know if that's going to be the best mixture for the Browns. I think you need to find that balance. I know Deshaun wants to get back into football, in the football groove, but you have an identity and you need to rely on that. Dalvin Cook is another dud for me. 15
That's
carries.
The guy that had the touchdown.
Okay. So Dalvin Cook, there we go. Dalvin Cook, 15 carries, 23 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 receptions, 13 yards, had the fumble, 8.6 fantasy points against the Lions. Was not a good week for Dalvin Cook. Not a good week. And I think, you had mentioned how shitty the Vikings are despite they have the record, but despite that, they're winning games by 1 point, or it was like 6 games or 7 games. They won by just 1 score.
The last possession.
Yeah, the last possession.
6 points or whatever. Yeah.
You lose to a Lions team who, to their credit, they've been on a roll. You had Dan Campbell with big nuts on that fake punt. So it's been a weird type of year for the Vikings. I feel like they're the pretenders. They're better than the Giants, but they're not. I don't think they're Super Bowl bound.
No, I think don't the Lions have a chance to win the division too? Can't they go out and try to? Are they mathematically alive to win the division? Was they talking about that today with Dan Campbell?
Let me see that.
I'll have that in front of you. Let
me look at the.
But yeah, they built a culture in Detroit. They bought in. They got it seems like everything's working there. Detroit and Motor City Dan Campbell, it's got things moving over there, man.
Yeah. So the Vikings 10-3, Detroit. I guess there's 4 more games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have. The Vikings will have to lose 4 in a row, and Detroit will have to win 4 in a row.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess
crazier things have happened. But yeah, no, that's okay.
Right. They still are very alive in the wild card though. So
yeah,
that's
something
to look forward to. And like you said, and it's funny you said the culture changed. Like I hope that's something we could look forward to next season, where something clicks and then you start seeing, the hard work that the players have been putting in. Justin putting in his hard work. You see him flourish, get him some playmakers, get him some blocking. Maybe fix up that defense a little bit. Actually, fix up that defense for sure. But that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. I'm not saying the Lions are world beaters, but you're looking for that kind of progress.
Yeah, but you see the ship. They believed in it. It didn't happen overnight, and they just got clowned. And it's like it's not the same old Lions. It's it's the new Lions apparently. And Jared Goff, is he now the quarterback of the future? Does that change the way they draft now? Like they have a plethora of picks that they got from the Rams, and the way everything kind of it's interesting. The Bears are going to be battling Detroit. and coming up. I think, and talking to Cars, he's all about the Vikings. They're like a moment away from a rebuild. He thinks they're just such pretenders. And, so with Green Bay kind of hitting the same thing once Rodgers is gone, it's going to be Bears in Detroit, which is going to be like old school kind of football back in the day, but, much different style of gameplay for both teams. So, yeah, it's going to be fun, man.
Yeah.
As we circle back to fantasy football.
Yeah, definitely. Another dud I got, Tua Tagovailoa, 10 of 28, 35.7 completion percentage, 145 yards, 1 touchdown, 12 points. If it wasn't for that tud, he'd be under double digits. Yeah. So that's a rough one. It's been a rough one for Miami. It's going to get even rougher.
We talked about Nick Chubb, and I talked about the Deshaun Watson offense. I thought that meant Amari Cooper would have some points. He was a dud, man. I don't know about all that, but 6.2 fantasy points for Amari Cooper. He had 2 passes on 42 yards, and it's the offense went elsewhere. Jacoby Brissett obviously had a much better not working relationship, but just seemed to have a better connection with Amari Cooper. I mean, that could change over time, but right now he seems that does not seem to be the case. And that's not getting any better for him either, because they go against the Ravens, the Ravens secondary. So he has an opportunity to kind of hopefully show us, hey, I can put up some numbers. He's got the Ravens secondary suspect. So I think he could actually turn it around in week 15. But again, a dud in week 14, which I was really surprised. He hurt me in a league this past weekend. Yeah.
There's a couple more, and then we'll get into injuries. I'll just read off a couple here, and then maybe just real quick. Christian Kirk, 9.5 fantasy points. I know Jacksonville put up a lot of points, but Christian Kirk was not one of the guys. Josh Palmer as well didn't have a good fantasy week, 9.3 points, and Mike Evans continues to have a rough season, 8.4 points.
I want no part of him in Chicago.
No, I don't want any part of him either. I feel like maybe I don't want to say a guy's best days are over, but it's with how rough it's been down there.
Drops a lot of balls, man.
Yeah, and a lot of balls that are put right there for him, right there for him. It's been really rough for him and the team. So those are the 3 real quick I got. You got any more before we head out?
You rattled them off. I mean, did you say Stephon Diggs? He had 6.7. CD Lamb, 8.3. Devontae Adams, I mean, he had double digits, but it was just barely 10.1. 3 catches, 71 yards. He just missed a touchdown, but at the same time, you expect him to get your 24 points just the way he's been absolutely killing it this year. I mean, Latavius Murray, Devin Singletary, you talked, and Travis Etienne was the other guy if we didn't talk about him. But man, and you want to just jump over to injuries and knock those out real quick? I mean, Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Who else?
Kyler Murray, Deebo Samuel. Kyler Murray will be out for the season. I'm sure everybody has found out by now. Deebo, we talked about before, will be back. Russell, concussion protocol.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett also out with a suspected concussion. We saw Mitch come into play last week.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, I think Lamar had a PCL injury.
Yeah. He may play, but he did not practice today. I saw that. So if you're not practicing Tuesday, I mean, granted, it's only Tuesday. So, and it's
now. Now looking at the Ravens quarterback situation, Tyler Huntley's also in concussion protocol. So you got Anthony Brown, whoever that person is, that young man. I'm serious. I've never heard of Anthony Brown in my life at quarterback. Maybe we'll find out.
Undrafted free agent, a drafted free agent rookie signing. I'm trying to bring up his information right now.
Right. So maybe he's a Brock Purdy in the waiting. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he has a good week this week if Lamar can't go. But yeah, Anthony Brown will be the quarterback if those 2 guys can't go this week in Baltimore.
Speaking of injury, man, did you see J.K. Dobbins running by any chance?
I did not.
I've never seen a dude run so fast and hard with like a limp like that. Like it was weird. It's interesting. He looks like he could ball out. He's like, I'm not there yet. I'm not in 100% shape. How he was just pissed he got caught from behind, but at the same time, I'm like, damn, bro, it's because you're running on like 1.5 tires, man. It's like it's nuts, but at the same time, this dude's a gamer. I love seeing that shit, man. Guys going out there fucking just warriors, dude. It's fucking that's why football NFL is awesome.
We love that.
I can't believe people say that shit's fixed, but anyway, that's another conversation.
Another long conversation, but yeah, continuing on with the injuries, Kenneth Walker the third, he had an ankle strain, so he's questionable.
Dameon
Pierce as well. He's also questionable with an ankle. Well, is he questionable or is he out?
It said
he's a good chance he'll be sidelined.
I read before we came on, it said he's more than likely to miss at just one game, which I fucking pray because I have this huge matchup on my first round of this. He's got Debo, he's got this dude hurt, Dameon Pierce, and there's somebody else I'm missing. But I'm like, oh my God, he's missing 3 starters for my first round on the 6th seed. Let me sneak in. Let's roll. Come on, baby.
Another injury to the running back position, Jeff Wilson Jr. Comment from
hip injury, right?
Yeah. Comment from Mike McDaniel says that Jeff Wilson Jr. his hip injury was, quote, more positive than the worst case scenario could have been. Crisis was averted, unquote. So yeah, he's probably going to be out, but he's not going to be out for the rest of the season. So
that injury single-handedly won me the matchup to play the one I just talked about. When he got hurt Sunday night, I won by less than a point. I was going to bring it up to show you guys, but it was fucking whatever. I won by less than a point. It was I woke up in the middle of the night to one of my kids getting sick, and I looked at my phone like, oh shit, let me see the standings. And I was like, I'm gonna make the playoffs. As I'm cleaning fucking puke and whatever else is good. It's been chaos, man, over at my house.
Speaking of daddy duty.
Yeah, exactly. Oh fuck, man. But anywho, so there's been plenty of injuries. Thankfully you and I are not on the IR as we got, we're going to take care of this daddy duties at home, right?
Oh, definitely. Continuing this on. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, are there any other injuries that we didn't talk about?
Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins were both out this past week.
Big.
Boyd had a dislocated finger, and then T. Higgins' hamstring injury was tweaked during pregame in week 14. So those are a couple of guys that you need to look for replacements for, probably.
Go get polls.
Yeah, definitely do that. Darren Waller also, he's coming off the IR in week 15. It's like we mentioned before, tight ends have, oh wow. Sorry, there was a pop-up that's for some reason is showing me Tom Brady's new girlfriend. But anyway,
I didn't get that.
I don't know, it could be just spam. But
I wanted that pop up.
I don't know. What does it say? I think this is bullshit. But it's
just popped new girlfriend. Let us know.
It just popped up. So
we're going off the rails.
Yeah, off the rails. Anyway, Darren Waller's coming back this week. But so if you want to go start him, take a chance with him. He's had a rough go. He's coming back off injury. I have him still, so I might just try to start him and see if I strike some.
I might try to grab
lightning in a bottle.
I gotta double check. You just reminded me. It's on my list to take a look at.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move on. Let's get to
waiver.
Do you want to go waiver?
We're starting sit. We do this every time.
Let's go waiver.
Okay.
Injuries, waiver, and then we go into starts and sits.
I like that. Okay. Why don't you kick it off with waiver wire, man?
Oh, thank you. Isaiah Hodgins from the New York Giants. He had 15 points this past week. I believe he had another touchdown the week prior as well. Let me go ahead and pull that up real quick.
You just fucking threw me for
a loop with that one. Isaiah Hodgins, week 13 and week 14, put up 15 points in both weeks. Had 4 catches, 6 targets, 38 yards, and a touchdown. Had a touchdown in both games. So, yeah, he's looking like a target with that depleted New York Giants secondary. He didn't look too bad. Like I said, he's making himself available and open. So if they continue to go to him, that might be a guy you could sneakily pick up and have some success with. So Isaiah Hodgins from the New York Giants.
Good call. Holy shit. I didn't even realize. I saw that. I didn't know that was his first name. Anyway, I thought it was Isaac. But anywho. No, so that's a great call, especially for like those guys, people that are dealing with, Deebo Samuel injury or, T Higgins, or you're trying to find some points somewhere because you're trying to win a matchup, which means you're trying to win some money at this point. I'm still surprised when I looked up Jerick McKinnon, rostered in less than 35% of the leagues. He's a dude that has a huge matchup against a defense that just hands over fantasy points to fucking running backs, and that's the Texans. I think he's a solid flex option for you. If you can go out and get him, obviously he's not going to go out and put up 37 fantasy points again next. I mean, if he does, that's fucking awesome. Then you're probably going to be like, hey, good call, Chris and Ivan. That's great. We won some money this past weekend. But at the same time, you can expect double digits because that is just what he's been doing recently. And I think he is a running back that in a place where you're going to need to find some points. Damian Pierce, another injury. Kenneth Walker, ankle, knee, what have you. There's a solution. Gus Edwards is another guy. We talked about J.K. Dobbins last week. Edwards had 3 less carries than J.K. Dobbins this past weekend. Didn't have the high production numbers because he didn't break one off for 41 yards like what's-his-face did, but he still had 13 carries. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. Dobbins had 15 carries, so only had 2 less carries. I think Gus Edwards and Dobbins could be both flex starts for you because of the run-heavy offense they're going to have to go with if they're starting Ivan at quarterback this weekend. Because no offense, Ivan, I haven't seen you throw a 65-yard ball across your body like Zach Wilson. But I think that'd be a nice pickup.
Honestly, standing still, I think I could get about.
I like that. From your knees, like DeMarcus Russell?
I don't know about from my knees, but from standing still, I could probably get about good 55, 60 yards.
I like it. With
a
little hutch or like a real.
No, I mean, just stand and fire. Like, I think I get about 50, 60 yards.
With the NFL size football?
Probably, yeah.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd have to throw it twice, I think, but what do you got for some waiver wires, man?
Another wide receiver, Josh Reynolds from the Detroit Lions. The guy started out red hot, and he is a factor in that offense. Don't get me wrong. Yep. The first, 5 weeks, he was averaging, I want to say, about 15, 12, 15, 13, somewhere around there, fantasy points. Had himself a good run. Then after the bye week, he kind of went cold and looks like he was out for injury. Came back a little slow in the Jacksonville game. But last week, he looked back to that, beginning of the year form, similar to what the Lions offenses looked like in recent weeks. He's put up 16.1 points this past week, 5 receptions off 6 targets, 51 yards, and a touchdown. He is a good player. He's a good player. He reminds me a little of Darnell Mooney. Not trying to, make
little bigger than Darnell.
Little bigger than Darnell. I think a little lankier, taller.
196.
A little taller than Darnell, but still, he's a great player. He does a lot of good things for the Lions, and I think that he's going to be a quality
27.
target. Yeah, I think he's going to be a quality target going into this run for the playoffs and such.
That's a good call, man. I like him a lot. I think I've always had, like, he's a guy that always sneaks on my roster. He's a guy that I'm like, oh shit, Josh Reynolds is available, and I end up fucking grabbing him. It's just the way it kind of fucking works for me, man. I don't know. It's just one of those guys. I don't know if you have a guy like that in fantasy, but he seems to be one of those dudes that ended up sliding over on the captain Justin Fields fantasy roster. But I got a receiver for you also. Talked about him like 4 times already. Donovan Peoples-Jones, rostered in about 45% of the leagues. He was a streaming option for pretty much everyone all year. Just that's why he's at this position where he's at less than 50% rostership. But he has done nothing but double-digit PPR production, 7 out of his last 8 games, just coming off a career high or season high in receptions, targets, and receiving yards this past week. I think he's got that big play option or big play opportunity. He's a big physical receiver, and it seems like Deshaun likes that big physical type, so he's going to keep trying to feed the ball to the things that he likes. And I think that means Deshaun Watson and Donovan Peoples-Jones could be inclined for more successful things to come.
Yeah, you know what, and
especially, they're going against the Ravens, like we talked about. Nothing. When we talked about Cooper, nothing ails you but a secondary that just kind of gives fantasy points or receiving yards for whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that they're gonna try to force, or at least allow Deshaun to ease into coming back into the league and playing again. So I could see that uptick in passes, and definitely passes to Donovan Peoples-Jones going up. I'm gonna go with Chuba Hubbard. It's been a weird running back by committee for the Panthers. He ended up putting up 15.9 points this past week against the Seahawks. 14 carries, 74 yards, had a touchdown, 3 receptions off 3 targets, 25 yards. If he's suddenly the main guy and the main focal point, I would say pick him up. But it's been a weird type of year. Ever since CMC went out, you had multiple different running backs in there. Yep. He's young enough to be that, hey, we're going to let you go run with it. You're going to be our guy for here on out. I will go ahead and take a shot on him, even if it's just to keep an eye out or whatever. We have one more week left in the regular season, at least for our leagues. But yeah.
Chuba Hubbard. I had Dante Foreman, and he hurt me because I had Hubbard on my bench, started Foreman, backfired. What are you going to do? That's what happens. That's why we're, up here pretending like we know what we're talking about, right? No, but Chris Moore, my old buddy from high school. No, Chris Moore, the receiver from Houston Texans, was a dude that is rostered in pretty much no leagues, like 5%. But he had his second 100 receiving yard game this past weekend. He had 124 yards. I think he's a guy. You're looking at Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins with the foot injury, Cooks with the groin injury. Moore took advantage, and they're still on the injury report. Keep your eyes out if you're trying to stream a receiver, trying to find some points like we talked about. I'd maybe jump on Chris Moore and see if he could continue to have a hot streak with Mr. Allen or whoever's quarterbacking for them right now. But yeah, that was someone to think about. I thought he was, those last second guys, like, oh shit, no one put a waiver claim on him. You can probably pick him up tomorrow morning,
Yeah, definitely. Gonna go to running backs. You saw Ramondre Smith go down yesterday.
Yes, all your take. I like, good call.
Pierre Strong Jr. looked like he was ready to play. 5 carries, 70 yards, had a touchdown, 2 receptions off 2 targets, 20 yards, 17 points. This past week, he's only rostered in 0.6 of fantasy leagues, so he might be a guy that's that next man up and surprises you. They like to use running backs a lot in that Belichick system. He could be a very, very solid pickup for this playoff run. So I would say, Strong Pierre. Is it Pierre? Yeah, Pierre Strong Jr. Lost the name. I lost the name real quick.
No, you're good. I saw DJ Shark's name pop up there. We talked about him last week. We talked about him the week before as he came back off an injury. But he was a dude rostered in less. I mean, he's rostered in a lot more leagues, almost 2/3 of the league, so 65%. But put together consecutive 90-yard receiving weeks, 90-yard receiving games. I think he's a dude that with that offense, Amon St. Brown, you had Jamison Williams come in, had that 41-yard touchdown catch, which is great. But that was his only catch. Obviously they had him on a pitch count. They're easing him in, but the way things are looking, I think you could still see Shark continue to flourish in this offense. And if you could get your hands on him, somebody had dropped him due to, their situations at the end of the season, and he's sitting there right now. Hey, not worth grabbing. So another receiver could help you out, with some of the injuries we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go mention him. He had a big week. I'm going to mention him just because I want to butcher his name again. Chigozim Okonwo. I hope it is it. I hope it's it. Tight end for the Titans. Had 12 points. So this is a standard league, but had 18 points this past game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. 6 targets, 45 yards, and a touchdown. But yeah, pick him up. He's only rostered in a limited amount of leagues right now. I want to
5%.
Yeah, like 5% of leagues. Yeah, but this one says 9 points. But point is, he's out there, he's available, and if he becomes a consistent target, hey, why not? Go ahead and take a shot at him.
Yeah, man. I think we nailed it with some of the we talked about a bunch of waiver wire claims, man. I think there's a bunch of dudes out there you can go out and get your hands on. You want to jump over to starts and sits and wrap this bad boy up?
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you kick us off?
All right, so I'm going to stay. Oh, man, you threw me off here. All right. I'm going to go with, I was going to say a running back to start. I'm going to go with Miles Sanders. No, I don't even want to use that one. I'm going to go Garrett Wilson against Detroit. I just think, the whole benching of Zach Wilson has done nothing but just take Garrett Wilson to the next level. Him and Mike White, or the confidence of Mike White to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson, who is pretty, he was demanding the ball at first. And, hey, kudos to him. You show, you put out, you talk, you better, you walk that walk, you talk that talk, you walk that walk. Jesus Christ. But 3 straight double-digit PPR finishes for him. He caught 6 out of 7 passes for 78 yards against, Buffalo secondary, who was supposed to shut him down. I mean, he didn't have 100 yards, but he still put up good numbers. And he's got a pretty solid matchup against Detroit. I think you're looking at a guy that could go off and have a monster fucking day. Mike White included. He's a waiver claim. If he's out there, I think this would be a good matchup too for him, by the way. But I would start Garrett Wilson if you were on the fence, with the whole quarterback situation after they went with Buffalo for Mike White. I think that's a guy you can start with confidence.
A little caution with Mike White. We forgot to mention he did get hurt. So depending on how depending on how he got fucking rocked.
He got folded like a chair, man, the wrong way.
Depending on how he feels and how he is, we'll see what happens. I'm expecting him, if he came back and played, I'm expecting him to play. But yeah, I agree with Garrett Wilson has been off the charts better since the benching. I'm going to go with 2 guys that we talked about, and they're going up against the Texans, Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco. You know how I feel about running backs playing the Texans, man. You know how I feel about it. If you need if you don't have a Jerick McKinnon, he's out there, like Jackle had mentioned. If you need an Isaiah Pacheco, go get him. He's out there as well. Those guys are going to go up against one of the worst defenses rushing wise in the National Football League. I think they could have a big week this week. Not only in the running game, but for McKinnon's, in the passing game as well. You see, he had over 100 yards as a running back in the receiving game and a couple touchdowns too. So those 2 guys for me going up against the Texans this week.
I like it. Tony Pollard started for me against the Jags. Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard both had great weeks this past weekend in a very run-heavy offense, which I was a little bit surprised. CD Lamb had a bad week, but both of those dudes, one had 17.6 points. I think that was Elliott. Pollard had, I think, over 20 points. But this is a guy, he had 21 points. Or 21.2. Nonetheless, he has over 20 points out of 5 out of his last 6 games played. Dallas plays Jacksonville on the road, and it's a top 10 fantasy matchup again for running backs. I look at Tony Pollard to capitalize on this matchup, which means, if you have Ezekiel Elliott, I think you could start him as well. They're looking at, thunder and lightning, hammer and nail, however you want to look at it. They're just fucking pounding the rock over there. And it's, great that they brought in, what's his face as a receiver, T.Y. Hilton, to try to help things out, stretch the field a little bit. But yeah, I think Tony Pollard's a start against Jacksonville Jaguars for Week 15. Give me another one, Ivan.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna go with Terry McLaurin against the Giants. I actually believe that the Redskins.
Thank you.
I almost said it again. I believe that the Washington Commanders are going to beat the New York Giants. I think they're going to beat them. I won't say they're going to put up Eagles numbers, but I think they're going to control the end of that game. Yeah, I think they're going to control the end of that game and really just run away with it against the Giants. I don't trust the Giants, similar to how, Cars and you have mentioned, like you don't trust the Vikings. I think they're the same team, different record. You know what I mean? Like they have talent, but they're just one team can't find a way to win the, close games. The other one just has some way found out how to eke out some of the close games. So
it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Exactly.
Like they just fucking took off. And yeah, it's a good call, man. I could see that.
And I like Terry McLaurin. I like Scary Terry. He's a good receiver.
Me too. I was hoping he was the guy that the Bears were going to try to maybe get their hands on if he didn't get that extension.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, here we are. We'll have other options in polls we trust.
Definitely.
Miles Sanders, I've talked about him a few times. I've talked about the Eagles all weekend, unfortunately, or all night. I just hate our defense against this Eagles offense. I feel like we're going to be looking at some points, which means Justin's going to have to do a ton of fucking work, which isn't great when their defense is just as scary as their offense, with the size of those fucking bodies they brought in, with Dominic and Sue and the other guy. I can't think of his name, but he's like 6'8", 380 pounds or whatever. But Miles Sanders, like we talked about earlier, 11 touchdowns to this season, week 14. He didn't have any last year. We talked about a matchup where the Bears give up the fourth most fantasy points to opposing running backs on average at 26.36 points per game. And like I said, he's scoring touchdowns at will. It looks like it's somebody who has had, a success with 28.5 fantasy points. 2 out of the last 3 games with defenses that are on the bottom half. So if he has a good matchup, he's performing. So Miles Sanders is another one that I think you're going to be happy with the results there. If you were starting him, which I think you probably should at this point as you move in. So there you go, Logan. I'm glad, man.
Yeah, I agree. We hate to say it, but we got to face reality. The Bears defense can't really stop a cold. Yeah. And you see what Miles Sanders has been doing the past couple weeks. Great pick, Jackle. I'm going to go with the guy that I talked about as a waiver wire pickup, Pierre Strong Jr. I think he might have a good week against the Raiders. The Raiders are just so wishy-washy. I can't really say who they are, what their identity is. I mean, they have great players. Obviously, Josh Jacobs is having a great year. Devontae
they franchised
Adams.
him, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Devontae Adams. The only one that really hasn't had a great year is, Carr's had a good year too, even though it's kind of.
Tom Brady will be there next year.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to keep him, even though I think he's a solid quarterback. The only one that's had a horrible year is Darren Waller. But defensive wise, I don't really trust them. They've had too many games where they've given up too many big leads. They give up too many yards. I like Pierre Strong Jr. I think they're going to find a way to get him involved. If Ramondre Smith is out for some significant time, I think Harris is out as well.
Yeah. I think he's the starter. I think he's going to be their guy. I think Stevenson's out,
Pierre Strong Jr.
All right. I got to start for you, tight end. We talked about the Browns a few times also. David Njoku. He's a dude that seems to be a guy back from injury. He's building a solid rapport with Watson. He had 7 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown in week 14 against a really strong Cincinnati secondary. He's not necessarily, like most tight ends these days where it's like a tight end or bust for a decent fantasy day, just because I like it, I think he could be in a mid-range tight end one conversation going into this weekend against the Ravens. I like this matchup. I think he's a guy that could put up some fantasy numbers for you from the tight end position. David Njoku is a starter for me.
Definitely. I agree with that. He was one of those guys that was on the bench for the other guy's team that was like, God. I was telling Jackle real quick, I could have lost by 100 points this week. We'll just say that. The guy had some killers that he left on the bench, and I still lost. So,
Hey.
It is what it is. It is what it is. I'm just glad I didn't get a C note hung on me in fantasy. It'd be embarrassing. But let's go move on to sits. Why don't we
talk about some sits?
I am actually going to sit Justin Fields. I'm not in real life, but in fantasy, I think I'm gonna sit him. I don't know if this offensive line could hold up against this defense for the Eagles, and I don't know if Justin's gonna run as much as we've seen him run before. I still think he's kind of hurt on that shoulder. That was at left shoulder. I just don't see it being a good day for the Chicago Bears whatsoever. Seeing what the Eagles did last week and all year, pretty much, except for the Commanders game, I'm going to sit Justin Fields. As blasphemous as it might sound, look what the Eagles have been doing.
I'm starting that motherfucker, just so you know. I'm starting him because I need him to start and do at least what he's been doing every time he touches the ball. He's a top 5 fantasy quarterback right now. Like, I hear you though. I want to say like you're being very cautious because I feel like we don't want, I don't want him to get hurt either, man. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's fantasy wise. I don't see him.
You don't see him putting up a number.
Maybe if I'm going to throw out a random number this week, what I think the Bears might do, if he's able to get a touchdown, maybe he could get 15 points.
Okay. All right.
If he picks up a touchdown. But I still don't know if they're
He hasn't had less than 15 points since week 4.
Right.
Just so you know.
Right. That's why I stood with 15. Wow.
Gotcha.
So I'm just going to go with that.
Okay. You know what? I like it. Okay. I hope you're wrong just because I need him so I can fucking win my money here. It's got fucking playoff matchups, man. But yeah, man, I'm with El Nino Brown. I need him to I need some points.
Yeah. And look, I love the guy, but I'm just saying, I saw what the Eagles can do. We'll see.
I'm picking up with Tommy Brown, I'm throwing down my man.
Who you got, Jackle?
Oh boy. We talked about him earlier as a dud. Mike Evans, sit that dude, man. He is just a guy that I think you can't trust at this point. He's lodged single-digit PPR outings in his last 3 games. He's sailing to have 60 catches and a touchdown. It's nothing good right now for him. He's arguing with Brady. I just think the Mike Evans hype or just that type of relationship is fractured, which means the fantasy hype for Mike Evans is kind of gone south. So he is definitely a sit for me against a really strong Bengals secondary.
I think I'm going to go ahead and sit a Pat Freiermuth this week against the Panthers. The Panthers defense is surprisingly good. Their offense has found some type of
coach to play for too.
Right. They found some type of rhythm, some type of identity, which is the ground game. I don't really trust the Steelers defense. Depending on if Kenny Pickett is playing or not, he's had his ups and downs. But if it's Mitch, I mean, Mitch, you know what I'm saying? But with Mitch being the quarterback, I don't know if Freiermuth eats as much this week against. I like the Panthers defense. I think they might squeak it out. I think it might be a close game, but I think Freiermuth might get shut down.
I got another tight end for you. I'm glad you said that. Tyler Higbee, sit him. That Baker Mayfield hype, I think that might have been like a one-hit wonder. They were fucking just calling out numbers for receiver routes. Like that's how they were doing it with him.
That's how they were doing it.
Which is just crazy to think at the NFL level, like sandlot football. But, hey, it just also goes to show, Baker Mayfield is the number 1 pick for a reason. It's got some skill there. And it looks like he's their starter for the rest of the way. But speaking of why you shouldn't start Tyler Higbee, it's just, I don't trust Baker Mayfield right now, even though I just said these great things. He caught 2 passes in each of his last 3 games. He is just really not doing much with his opportunity. And therefore I would sit him, even though people are going to probably like, oh, Higbee and Mayfield, I could see it kind of blossoming. Yeah. I mean, this could be a freezing cold take, but I think he's going to have a pretty big stinker against Green Bay.
Yeah, it's up at Lambeau Field. Yep. It's going to be cold. I don't think he has, that he obviously doesn't have the temperate climate that he had, in this
the Packers
game.
have to win out to make the playoffs.
Packers have to, they're playing for something. The Rams are playing for draft position. So, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I really don't got anybody else, Jack. I don't know. Do you have one more?
You brought up, sitting. I'd sit Derek Carr against the Patriots defense. I thought that was another one, and I would sit Travis Etienne against Dallas. I think that's just a tough matchup for him, even though he's really kind of been struggling, as of late. So those are a couple of sits for me. He's averaging 2 yards per carry in the last 3 games.
Yeah, I want to go out on a limb. Well, I feel like Justin's my whoa, what the fuck are you talking about?
You always got a couple. I
always got one. Which I like to shake things up a bit. You know what I mean?
Keeping it fantasy.
Right, keeping it fantasy. Tua Tagovailoa's had a rough go of it. The Dolphins have kind of had a rough go of it. As of late, I'm thinking about sitting him up in Buffalo. It's going to be cold.
They were using heaters in 55-degree weather.
Right. It's going to be freezing up there. I mentioned the stats this past game. It weren't great. me go see if I can pull them up real quick. They weren't great. It hasn't been
Tua?
great.
I just
Yeah,
had it too. I'm sorry.
it's right. Yeah, if you got it, go ahead.
Yeah, right here. Tua. What do you want for last week?
Yeah, well, the last couple weeks, you had two
sure.
losses for the Dolphins,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, he had this past week he was 10 for 28 for 145 yards with one touchdown, no picks, but he did have 2 sacks. He did rush for almost 30 yards. That was in a loss to the Chargers, and then he had a loss to the Niners where he was 18 for 33 with 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, sacked 3 times, 0 rushing yards, and he also had a fumble. So yeah, he hasn't necessarily had and what's that equate for fantasy points? 12.6 last week, 15.8 the week before.
Yeah.
And that was where the 3 or 4 weeks prior he was actually averaging over 20 points. So
right, and that completion percentage is what I'm looking at as well. You had 54.5 against the Niners. I mean, the Niners are a great defense, but then you had a 35.7 against the Chargers, and it didn't look like they were going to complete a pass for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like for a little while, you struggled at completing a pass. But I'm going to say that Tua Tagovailoa is a sit for me. So there we go.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I think we hit the nail. I mean, playoff edition almost. Speaking of playoffs,
yes.
I wish all you guys luck. If your season starts, your playoff season starts week 15, TTNL League playoff start week 16. So this is our last week of the regular season. It is the top 4 teams make the playoffs, and what we will be doing is having a separate tournament for the top 4. The first place finishers will play in a head-to-head through the app, and we'll post it so you guys can see everything. But
you'll keep all your players.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's just that last week when whoever's in the championship, whoever's in the championship will play against each other also in a separate matchup. While there's 4 championship games because there's 4 divisions, each team that wins the 1 seed, the one that's the top seed, will play.
Whoever wins the championship in each division, the 4 teams that win the championship for each division will play in a tournament, a 4-team tournament, to see who the overall TTNL Fantasy League
with
champion
the same numbers. Whatever points they score go against everybody. So the winner of the Super Bowl for that division will be head-to-head, and whoever has the most wins the title. It's basically top overall points. So it's 1 versus 4, if that makes any sense. And we'll explain it next week when we get into it, because we're going to show you guys the divisions, who's the 1 through 4 seeds who made the playoffs, and then what that looks like for week 16 and then week 17, which would be the divisional finals, as well as the overall who's getting the trophy and belt sent to the house. So that's how that's breaking on.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
good show.
Yeah, man.
Good place to stop. Good to wrap things up. We appreciate
no international shipping, Logan. So I don't know what to tell you, bro. I can't.
Oh, actually, you know what? No,
I'm just kidding.
I jumped the gun. Let's go get us some questions real quick. We got a couple. I know Bob always has a couple good ones. If you guys got some questions, throw them in the chat. Bob asks, Fields or Herbert? Well, you know where I'm going this week.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, so I had Herbert as a start for me against the Titans. I think he's a guy he's got Keenan Allen back, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler's got his 3 weapons trio. Mm-hmm. I think the ceiling is higher for Fields than it is for Keenan Allen or for Justin Herbert. So I think I'm going to start Fields over. Yeah.
Well, you know where I'm at. I already explained it. Couple more from Bob.
I looked this up before the show. Brian Robinson's like an RB like 37 going into this weekend for week 15, and Aaron Jones is like I thought he was top 12. So to that point, I just think the value is so off skewed. I just think Aaron Jones, they're playing for something. The Packers are playing for something. Not saying the Commanders aren't, but I just think Aaron Jones is the guy that I would start. What about you?
I'm with you. Aaron Jones, simple enough. I think that Rams front 7 isn't the same Rams
Aaron
front
Jones,
7.
running back 8.
Yeah, I like Aaron Jones against the Rams, especially up at Lambeau. One more from Bob. Hockenson or Freiermuth? You know where I stand. I already said I'm sitting Freiermuth this week. Who you got?
With Mitch at quarterback, I think, TJ Hockenson and the Vikings, non-PPR. Yeah, I'm probably going to go with, I think I'm going to go with the Hockenson.
All right. Logan, Goff, or Geno this week?
Oh, I saw this proposed on Twitter actually today. I'm so indifferent on this because I'm benching Geno in one of my leagues. So by proxy, I'm going to say Goff just based on all the stuff we talked about with the receivers and them just having the ability to, if they have to throw the ball all over the yard. I kind of like that start. I don't know. I know they're going against the Jets, but
El Nino Brown, Goff or Fields this weekend only?
Fields.
Oh, Trevor Lawrence too. I'm sorry. Trevor Lawrence, Goff, or Fields?
Woo. Oh boy. Yeah. I'll let you go first.
I'm gonna go with Trevor. It's rough for me because I like the way the Lions have been playing. Otherwise, I would have went Goff. But I don't know. I still like that Jets defense. We'll see where it goes. I think Trevor Lawrence is riding a high. I know the Dallas Cowboys are really good, extremely good defense. Michael Parsons is a monster. I'm going to go ride with the hot hand and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think I actually agree with you there. I think that, as you talked about Philly's matchup and what you expect from Justin Fields, I think you could say the same for Trevor Lawrence versus the Cowboys to some extent, but at the same time, I think Trevor Lawrence with the weapons, I think he has the opportunity to probably put up more production at the quarterback position this next week, as much as I think Fields has a higher ceiling, just the ability to, break plays and that kind of stuff like we've talked about. I think Trevor Lawrence is probably the safer start.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Noah T, DPJ or
DPJ.
Pittman?
DPJ.
I'm with you. I think that's an easy one,
questions,
DPJ. Yeah. So let's see. Any more?
Yeah, man.
No more? All right.
I don't know.
Well, if there's no more questions in the chat, thank you guys for joining us now. Again, always a great time. Always looking forward to Tuesdays. It's going to start wrapping up, so we're not going to be here on Tuesdays anymore.
Couple more weeks.
It's kind of shocking. I feel like it was our first show just a couple weeks ago.
I know.
And the season has flown by. You guys, the fans, love you guys. You guys have made it so easy for us to come here and just enjoy talking football, talking with you guys, getting your questions, comments, and everything like that.
Really
love to see it. Love to see it. Jackle loves to see it. I love to see it. And I know Claudio loves to see it. And we love to see Claudio here. We can't wait to get him back. He had field hockey practice or something like that?
Banquet. Being a good dad, taking doing his thing. He had a banquet.
He had a banquet for his daughters for field hockey and stuff like that. So Claudio had to be a dad. Love him, give him all the respect in the world, and we'll go ahead and see him again next week. But anyway, for Chris Jackle, I'm Ivan Vargas. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the Tape Never Lies Network.
Yes, sir.
TapeNeverLies.com. Become a patron. Get all the bonus coverage. And with that, we're out. Peace.
What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy?
Oh, we're still on the air.
Hey-o.